Got to make this race not on personalities. Stop questioning the size of her crowds.
The day after a rapidly spiraling Donald Trump dropped an unhinged conspiracy theory that Vice President Harris is using AI to manufacture images and video footage of the enormous crowds at her rallies, top Trump ally and former Republican Speaker Kevin McCarthy went on Fox News to publicly beg his candidate to stop. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we did a video about the actual conspiracy theory yesterday, but as a reminder, Donald Trump, who routinely says stupid, dishonest, and unhinged things, kind of broke the mold by peddling repeatedly a conspiracy theory that the vice president is using artificial intelligence to just create whole cloth manufactured images of the crowds at her rallies. Okay, even though that has been debunked, even though number one, he offered no evidence for it, and number two, it's been debunked by just reels and reels of footage from people who were at the rallies and photos from people at the rallies. None of that matters. This is just a reminder that one of the vice president's communications staff is making fun of Trump for it. Donald Trump is definitely not mad. Do not say that Donald Trump is mad. And he has a side-by-side, comparison to Donald Trump's, unhinged screed and an image of the vice president's rally at the Detroit airport. Now, that's the context for this. Well, it's so bad that Kevin McCarthy, the former Republican Speaker of the House and the top Republican fundraiser, if this guy's got one talent, it's raising funds for Republicans. Certainly not governing. Well, he went on Fox News to basically beg Donald Trump to shut the hell up with these unhinged conspiracy theories and desperately try to get him back on message.
And you've got to make this race not on personalities. Stop questioning the size of her crowds and start questioning her position when it comes to what did she do as Attorney General on crime. Question what did she do when she was supposed to take care of the border as a czar. Question that they brought inflation. And she was the tie-breaking vote when it came to inflation. When it came to IRS agents, this is a perfect person to run against. You thought John Kerry was a flip-flopper? She is the biggest flip-flop with the most extreme positions, and you got a short time frame to do it. So don't sit back, get out there and start making the case and use her own words to do it to her.
You raised money.
So again, you can see that these Fox News hosts are nodding along affirmatively. They also want Donald Trump to stop, with these unhinged conspiracy theories. I will say it's kind of funny. Kevin McCarthy is a great fundraiser, not a particularly skilled politician, since, of course, it took him 15 attempts to become Speaker of the House. And then he was historically unpopular. He made history, as a matter of fact, by being the first the first Speaker of the House, period, to be removed from that position by members of his own party. And then a few months later, he resigned in disgrace at the end of November because he was so furious. And he has spent much of his post-congressional career trying to initiate primary challenges against those who removed him from his position in the first place, all of which is great. I love the Republican infighting. More of it, please. But I'm sure Donald Trump, who is a malignant narcissist and a moron, is going to find it very hard to take political advice from Kevin McCarthy, given how much of a failure McCarthy is. Although, to be fair, too, Donald Trump, quite frankly, is a political failure. He won the 2016 election by way of the Electoral College, which, as you know, is affirmative action for Republicans because they can't compete in terms of popularity and winning hearts and minds. So they have to appeal to this relic, which is found nowhere in any other advanced democratic republic on earth, to basically give them an outsized advantage by way of red rule states. He's lost in 2018. He lost the 2020 presidential election. He presided over the Republican defeat in 2021 in the Senate, the 2022 midterm shellacking, the 2023 off-year elections. And right now, as of at least this moment, Donald Trump is losing the 2024 election. So you're talking about two losers trying to navigate this together. But Donald Trump, I think, is too much of a narcissist to listen to Kevin McCarthy's sound advice. I want to play another clip. Last thing I'll say on McCarthy, though. I think it's hilarious how he's trying to, peg Vice President Harris as a flip-flopper, given that Donald Trump will say one thing on Monday and say something completely different on Tuesday, and then the third thing on Friday, and contradict himself every which way. Republicans don't care about his, unparalleled inconsistencies on answers and issues, but they're going to try to hold the vice president to a different standard. So again, that's something that we on the left should constantly flip on them, constantly point out the double standard and say, we're not interested really in whatever inconsistencies inconsistency you seem to think exists with the vice president, given that your candidate, Donald Trump, is a pathological liar who is the most inconsistent political candidate in history. Once you address that, then we'll talk about the vice president. Somebody else who's not particularly happy with the current state of the 2024 election is Peter Navarro, a former Trump advisor, still a Trump supporter. He is covering for Steve Bannon, a top Trump advisor who's currently serving a jail sentence for defying a subpoena. We'll get into more of Peter Navarro's history as a refresher, but this is what he had to say as he guest hosts Steve Bannon's War Room podcast about the current state of the election.
Rally 1.0 has always been a fast-moving feast for rally goers and TV networks alike. But Trump doesn't need feast now. He needs votes. And the current rally formula is simply not sufficiently focused on the very stark policy differences between him and Kamala Harris that will swing voters in key battleground states. Instead, when Trump attacks Harris personally rather than on policy, Harris's support among swing voters rises, particularly among women. It's just a fact of life right now. Rally.
And again, that's Peter Navarro of all people. As a reminder, Peter Navarro, former advisor to Donald Trump, was filling in for Steve Bannon's War Room podcast. And Navarro was one of the many Trump supporters sentenced to prison for his own shenanigans, his own corrupt activities on behalf of Donald Trump. This is a man who was criminally convicted for his corruption and yet is savvy enough to recognize the current state of the 2024 election and to beg Donald Trump to get back on message. Now, another Republican who weighed in on this is George Conway. George Conway was married to Kellyanne Conway, another top Trump supporter, Trump advisor, and his best spin doctor. I mean, she's enormously talented at pivots and redirects. She's one of the best communicators in the Republican field and incredibly agile. And her ex-husband, George Conway, is a never-Trump Republican, and he has made it his life's mission, and I respect him for this, is basically to ruin Donald Trump's life politically and to troll him and to mock him and to belittle him. Love it. So he said in response to this, this is actually in response to a doctor, a medical doctor who responded to Trump. So, again, Trump, going on his whole screed about how Kamala Harris cheated at the airport. She used ID. They don't exist. Nobody was there. She used AI. The doctor responded to this. If a sitting president released this message, there would and should be calls for the 25th Amendment, which, of course, is how the vice president and the cabinet would remove an incapacitated president from power temporarily or permanently. George Conway responded to this and said, absolutely no question, doctor. If a sitting president were as detached from reality as Trump's post shows him to now be, he would undisputably be, quote, unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, end quote, within the meaning of Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, and thus, people would call on him to be removed. Speaking of George Conway is also the mastermind behind the, I'm going to bring it up here, it cracks me up, the Anti-Psychopath PAC. And again, the whole thing is being orchestrated by Conway, I think, brilliantly to just troll Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans and put it out there about how stupid and unhinged and mentally unfit he is to be president. And so on the subject of Trump's struggles with the vice president's popularity and crowd size, George Conway's PAC put this ad together.
Donald Trump is rattled.
The Trump crowd is smaller than the Harris-Walz crowd was.
He's mad.
Trump was complaining that an estimated 10,000 people were at Harris's event.
He's upset.
The school administration stopped us from getting another 500, 600, even 1,000 people in.
Oh, Donald, do you ever stop whining?
Kamala, she was here a week ago, lots of empty seats.
Not enough people want to go to his rallies anymore. They want to go to Kamala Harris's rallies. Enjoy the rallies while they last, Donald, because where you're going, you're not going to be able to have any. Learn more at psychopac.org.
Love it. Great stuff. So yeah, folks, again, this is genuinely good news for Democrats, more good news, right? The vice president is dominating in the polls. She's dominating in fundraising. She's dominating in energy. And again, The election's not today, right? If the election were today, she'd win, but the election is on November 5th. So we have an obligation to keep all of that, the polls, the fundraising, the energy alive. We have to keep that momentum. It will not sustain itself. It's an active choice every day between you and I to make that happen, and people like us. But I will say this is additional good news, too, that Donald Trump is making choices and just making the wrong choices, making stupid choices, such that, again, with each passing day, a more prominent MAGA Republican comes out of the woodwork to beg him to stop. And that's how you know that right now we're winning. So let's stay winning, and let me know what you think in the comments.